You're tuned into Visions, a business and community affairs program designed to encourage and promote entrepreneurship in Central Alabama.
Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Vision. Cedric Vaughn, very excited about our guest today. Montgomery County Probate Judge Stephen L. Reed is going to be talking with us and sharing great information with us today. Judge Reed, thanks for being with us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Very excited. You know, we've been working for a while to try to get you on the program. You've been very busy. And one of the things that you've been very busy with these days is the election process.
Absolutely.
And we've got that coming on, and so we want to just bring you on as we got another few days to get everybody ready.
Well, the election is very important, not just at the top of the ballot, but all the down ballot offices that you have, everything from congressmen down to circuit judges, district judges, county commissioners, as well as school board races. So you have the whole gambit here in the party primary that's coming up, both on the Republican side as well as the Democratic side.
Okay. Now for people who might not be familiar with how your office works, how does your office administrate or officiate in that whole election process?
So the probate judge is the chief election official of the county, and so we work with the sheriff as well as the circuit clerk in terms of who's normally doing the absentee ballots to make sure there's an effective and efficient process. But the probate judge, and in this case, in the Montgomery Election Center, is the manager for the elections. And so we set up the machines, we make sure all the ballots are distributed, we train the poll workers, the chief inspectors, we send out the voter registration cards. We do everything we can to facilitate a smooth democratic process to elect the officials of the people's choice. And it's really an all-encompassing effort on behalf of all of the entities working within the county to make sure that on election day, those 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. hours go very smoothly for the public. Now, we're working days and weeks and hours before then, but obviously that's our showtime, and that's the point that people really want to be able to get in, cast their vote, and get back out. And luckily, we've been able to do that, I think, very effectively in my tenure.
That's very good, very good. Now, so as far as this process, you guys are responsible for not just the city, but the county.
That's correct. So if you're in Pike Road, if you're in Grady, if you're in Matthews, anywhere, if you're in Snow, you're in all those areas, if you're in Montgomery County, then we're going to facilitate and manage that election, that polling precinct. We don't choose the polling precinct, the county does that. But we manage and we facilitate everything that goes on inside of the precinct. And so for us, that's making sure that people know what information they need to bring to the poll. That's a photo ID of some sort. That's making sure they get the right ballot. If they want to choose a Republican ballot, they get that. If they want to choose a Democratic ballot, they can get that. There is no crossover voting. You have to choose a party ballot in a party primary. So that's a little different than the general election in November. And we also try to make sure that people, if they have any questions, they can ask those of any of the inspectors, any of the poll workers that we have there. And if you can't find your name on the list, no one can identify you at that polling precinct, you can always vote a provisional ballot. But we've upgraded our technology. We are using now iPads to really drill down on the voter list. So that way if someone comes to the wrong precinct, then we can tell them exactly where they go next. It's a little bit different than the municipal election. Some of the precincts will be the same, but because this is a county election and because it's a state and national election, the precincts will be done differently. In the municipal election, if they live in the city of Montgomery, they may have voted inside their city council district because that's how the city councilman wanted it. But in this election, it'll go back to the normal county precincts where they may have voted in 2012, where they may have voted even in 2014.
Okay, so I remember, and I see every cycle I get a notice in my mailbox about where I'm supposed to go and
vote. That's right.
And so I remember a year or so ago, you had a PSA, you had a public service announcement letting people know what they needed to vote. And so you're saying when people show up, sometimes they may have forgotten that notice that they got in the mail.
That's correct. Right. And we send that out as a reminder, but people can always call the election center if they have any questions about that. But what we encourage our poll workers and our chief inspectors to do is to be very amenable to any questions that may be asked. And if someone is at the wrong place, let's try to put them in the right precinct. Now, we know sometimes people are voting on a rush. They're voting on a lunch hour. They have to pick up the kids. They have to pick up a loved one, or they have another errand. In that case, if they can't get to the other precinct, then they can vote a provisional ballot. They just have to come down to the Board of Registrars by that Friday after Election Day to certify that they are who they said they were. And that means just bringing a valid photo ID saying that, I voted a provisional ballot, but here's my ID showing I live at this address, and that way the provisional ballot will then be counted at the end of the process.
Now, speaking of the photo ID, in lieu of a driver's license, there is another way that you can get a photo ID. Is that correct?
That's correct. Well, you can get a free photo ID from the Board of Registrars, and you can get that this week, and they will give that to you. So that's not an issue. But if you don't have that, then certainly if you have a military ID, if you have a student ID, if you have a government employee ID, if you're a student at a university, you can use that. And you can also use tribal IDs. You can use a passport. So anything that's government issued, you can use for that photo ID. Now, you know, personally and politically, I didn't think we needed photo IDs. I thought it was an overreach that was in response to what took place in 2008 with the election of President Obama. I think it was political. I think it was intentional to try to minimize voter turnout. But what we tried to do a couple of years ago was to kind of shine a light as opposed to curse the darkness by doing an ad campaign statewide, letting people know what they needed to have. And so we're still encouraging, we still want the participation because people sacrifice too much, and that little thing shouldn't keep us from doing it. Although we know what the real motivation was, I think it's up to the public to make sure that they understand it, but that they come out anyway despite that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so you're really wanting to make sure that they are empowered with the information that they need to vote.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. Well, you know, you've got a lot of things that you do in your office.
Absolutely.
You know, a lot of community work. One of the things that that you do is you're responsible for mental health
Commitments.
Yeah. How does that work?
Well, the commitment process is one that's very emotional. It's very tough for a lot of families because when you're talking about people who are dealing with a loved one or someone that they know who has a mental illness, it's not always as easy to diagnose as something that's more outward. And so it may be erratic behavior, it may be a change in moods, it may be some actions or words that normally a person wouldn't do. And so someone comes down to the probate court if they feel like someone has to be committed and they can't get the help that they need to file a petition. It's for an involuntary commitment. So that's essentially saying, listen, we know that they won't do this on their own admonition, but we think they need some help, they need to get stabilized, they need some treatment, they need to be diagnosed. And so that process goes through the probate court, and we conduct a hearing to determine whether or not a person really needs to be committed to the State Department of Mental Health. Now again, because the state budgets have been gutted, and because they've been decimated, our mental health budgets have been gutted over 40%, in particular in southern states. You don't have long-term mental health commitments like you used to have. Mm-hmm. So now a commitment probably won't last longer than about 10 to 14 days. And so we don't really have the mechanisms in place to really give people the long-term help. So we're seeing kind of a revolving door. What we're trying to do in the probate court is to be proactive, and we are working with Envision 2020, the county, as well as the city of Montgomery, the sheriff's office, and the police to come up with a Healthy Minds network. And that's a network of stakeholders who are all at the table to try to come up with some other solutions that we can use both government, private, and public sector to really try to keep people who have this illness from not only hurting themselves, but maybe hurting other people, and really get them to be productive members of society and to destigmatize that. So the commitment process is one part of what we do in the probate court. It's certainly the most amount of hearings that I have, but it's something that we need to really be proactive about as a community if we're going to continue to have a high quality of life that keeps people in the river region area and that draws people here. You can't do that if you're not taking care of the least of these. And right now, that's an issue that I see all too often in the probate court.
Very good. You know, the importance of properly financially planning for your future is to keep yourself in a situation where you have to go through probate to do it for you.
That's right.
So one of the things you handle is wills and estates.
That's correct. And we handle wills and estates in those situations where maybe a will is not self-proving, where a person did not die with a will. I always tell people it's a lot easier to get those letters of administration, to get those letters of testamentary when you have an issue that's been taken care of. Oftentimes, as a good friend of mine likes to say, you know, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die.
That's right.
So, you know, with that said, you have to prepare for that day. And that's a big part of wealth building. In particular in the African American community that we don't do enough of, we don't talk enough about it. And so we often don't leave any resources that we may have to designated entities that we like. It may be a church. It may be your alma mater. It may be your family. It may be a nonprofit. Whatever those things are, it's a lot easier to do that if it's explained and it's written out and it's prepared for, as opposed to if it's being handled in the probate court. Because often what happens is that sometimes puts family members against one another. It may put close friends against one another, and that's not what anyone wants to see. And so the easiest way to deal with that is to deal with estate planning on the front end. And you're never too young really to deal with it. I learned that at a later age probably than I should have, but it's something that we really have to do to make sure our business is conducted effectively after we're gone.
Excellent. Well, we're getting close on time, Judge, but we wanted to compliment you and say, you know, I took my mom to one of your offices. She got a new car, had to go get it registered and get the title searched and title done, and it was a very expeditious process. Gave us our number and everything was great. So we wanted to say kudos to you for that organization.
Well, listen, I appreciate that, and I'm going to have to give the credit to the staff because we tell them don't forget the customer service.
Yeah.
That the customer is your paycheck. So when they come in, we got to take care of them. We want them to talk about their experience, and we want people to do it online, and you can do those things, but sometimes you have to come in to take care of that business. So I'm glad you had a pleasant experience and glad your mom did as well.
Well, now, and we've got to go, but your office also does guardianship and conservatorship.
That's correct. There are some times when you may have someone who's incapacitated or someone who's getting a little bit older who cannot handle their needs as well. And so a guardianship may be filed if someone has to have decisions made on their behalf as a person. The conservatorship is more so just kind of financially related. Someone who needs help, needs those decisions being made for them to kind of handle banking matters of their daily finances. And those are things that we see, again, from people who are older and sometimes don't want to relinquish that,
right.
But maybe getting taken advantage of by someone versus someone who may just need a power of attorney. And in order for them to be able to get certain information, they have to have the guardianship or conservatorship done. So those are matters that we also see that people come in for loved ones to help them out to make sure they can be assisted in the proper way. And if you have any questions on that, people can always call the probate court. We can explain it. We have a lot of this information online as well to answer some of the basic questions, but our staff is there to help the public and really try to educate them on if it's really needed, when it may be a good time to do it, and how you go about taking care of that.
Excellent. Judge, thanks for being with us on the program. Really enjoyed it. Great information. I want to encourage you to contact Judge's office in case you need any help on anything that he said today. And so we know we're going to see Judge in the community doing great work as always. That's going to do it for us on this segment of Visions. Please stay tuned and we'll be right back.